Warning: the following video contains material that may be disturbing to fans of Dave Ramsey and Ramsey Solutions. Viewer discretion is advised. There is a disease in the personal finance community on YouTube, and it's something I want to talk about before I decided to make a video on today. It's pretty polarizing, and it's the idea that all debt is bad. All debt is evil and should be avoided at all costs. Now, for the most part, this is perpetuated by people like Dave Ramsey or his Dave bots, as I call them. People who basically have the idea that, like I said, all debt is evil, and if you have it in your life, your number one priority should be to pay that off no matter what. Now, I couldn't really disagree with this idea more, and I'd like to explain why. But before I do, I just want to say that if your only idea of debt is that it is something you should not have in your life at all, then you owe it to yourself to watch this video just to see the type of wealth building tool you're missing out on. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's understand the idea that there are two kinds of debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And you've probably heard these terms before, but you didn't know exactly what they meant. Simply put, good debt is debt that's used to build your net worth, to make you richer over time. And bad debt is money that basically brings your net worth down. It's that simple. And if you're not sure what your net worth is, it's not a big deal. Your net worth is basically everything you own, so all your assets. So a house if you have one, a car, even a laptop, your phone, everything you own, if you sold that, that would be an asset. And a liability is any debt you have. So student loans, a car loan, credit card debt. So your net worth is basically the sum value of everything you own minus all your debts. Now for most people, especially early in life, if you're just getting started, you just graduated college, it's okay if your net worth is negative. That's going to change over time. But generally by the time you're in your early to mid 30s, you should be at least positive. Now, generally speaking, net worth is pretty much the easiest way to track how well you're doing financially over time. So as you get older, you kind of want to see your net worth going up. You want to be making more money and be worth more money. Even if that's not all necessarily cash just sitting in an account, but the sum value of everything you own, your house, your car, your debts are going down, your assets are rising in value. So generally, as you get older, it means you're worth more. So now let's go over some examples of what good debt and bad debt are. So good debt would be something like, for example, a mortgage. So you take a loan out against a house, and in general, houses and real estate appreciate. So you buy a house, it appreciates in value, and then you sell it years later if you want to. But since that house appreciated in value, then what you own went up in value, meaning you made money, meaning your net worth increases. Good debt would also be student loans. For example, if you take a loan out on a degree that makes you wealthy, well, it's probably a smart decision. That was smartly, correctly used debt. On the flip side, we have bad debt, and this is what you typically think of when you hear the term debt. This would be like credit card debt, car loans, student debt for degrees that don't pay well. So for example, if you take out a bunch of loans and you get a degree in something like theater and arts, well, in general, theater and arts don't pay too well. So if you took out $100,000 to get a degree in that, chances are you're not going to make a good return on investment. So in that case, your net worth wouldn't actually be helped. So it'd be bad debt. Another big one I've seen before are personal loans. So every year, right around November, December, Christmas time, you'll start to hear on the radio or on Netflix, I've seen one, basically companies offering what they call personal loans, meaning that they want to give you money to help you buy gifts for other people. And there's so much wrong with that, but that's just an example of debt that's not useful because you're taking out a loan and your net worth is not increasing, right? You're giving it all away. If you have that problem, then just simply buy cheaper gifts or don't buy gifts at all that year. Don't take out a loan to buy gifts for other people. Another red flag for bad debt is typically that it has crazy interest rates or really weird terms and conditions. Anytime you see an interest rate that's 15, 20% or more, that's a sign that's bad debt. And that's really typical for something like credit card debt. So at this point, you might be picking up a theme that's really critical to understand. And that is that how you use debt makes a huge impact on whether or not that debt is good or bad. So for example, a student loan, like I said before, if you take out $100,000 of student loans, and path A means you become, you go into IT, for example. IT tends to pay pretty well. You're probably going to make a good return on that investment, meaning that your net worth will increase over time because of that degree. So it's good debt. However, if you use that same $100,000 to get a degree in theater and arts, like I said earlier, you're probably not going to make near as much of a return nearly as quick. So your net worth probably won't be helped over the long run, meaning that it was bad debt. So in this case, we have the same debt being used differently and having vastly different outcomes. Likewise, a mortgage can be the same way. So if you use a mortgage to buy a home that you can afford, well, then that's probably a smart decision. But if you use a mortgage to buy a house that's just way out of your league, but the bank approved you for it, that's probably not smart because all the money you're going to be making every month is going to this huge house payment. You can barely pay for your necessities. So in that case, that would, again, not be a smart use of debt. So that would be a bad debt. So the debt is not the thing to worry about, it's how you use the debt. And that's really the critical piece of information to understand here. Now, at this point, I do want to point out that I'm not knocking Dave Ramsey because he's helped a lot of people. And I don't think that what he's doing is a bad thing, but his view of debt, the view that he teaches, isn't right. And it's all based on the view of how he used debt when he was younger. So it wasn't his debt that got him into problems as much as it was his decisions with the debt. In fact, he took so much on. He wasn't smart with it. And if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So instead of taking that lesson, though, he just took the lesson that all debt is bad, I'm never going to have it again. And that's really not the right thing to do either. He went from one direction all the way over the other. But there's a happy middle ground that he didn't find. He just kind of flipped right over. Now, I do think it is important to be honest with yourself. If you're one of those people who have a hard time controlling their spending or controlling credit card debt, then yeah, you want to avoid that really at all costs. But chances are, if you're on my channel, right, if you're looking up personal finance stuff on YouTube, I'm betting you're not that kind of person. I bet you have discipline and self-control. And for the most part, Dave Ramsey's little baby steps and all his debt stuff, it doesn't apply to you. I mean, pay off the bad debt, but it's important to understand that not all debt is the same. So I wanted to give you some examples of how my wife and I have used debt intelligently to increase our net worth and how really anybody can do this. And the first example is student loans. Now, student loans are something that almost anybody can relate to today because anybody who really wants to get ahead in the workforce knows you have to have a college degree. And most people can't pay college, or the parents can't pay for college completely for them. So, for example, I went to a state university in the state I was born, which means my costs were a little bit lower, but ended up graduating with about $32,000 in debt, if I remember correctly, for my degree. Now, my degree was actually in general business and finance, which isn't that good, but thankfully I minored in computer information systems, meaning I was able to get into a software engineering job, and luckily that turned out well for me because IT in general pays pretty well. Now, this would be a good example of how to use debt because, for example, I went $32,000 into debt, but it let me have multiple six-figure jobs, meaning I made a big return on that investment. So in the long run, it was a smart decision. Now, a stupid decision I made was, right after I graduated college, I bought a new car. And guess what? I paid a lot of interest over the lifetime of that car, and now the car went down in value, so overall that hurt my net worth. I actually made a video on that here. But I learned an important lesson from it, which is simply, don't go into debt over a new car. It's not worth it. Now, another big component of my wife and I's personal financial lives is that we have a couple rental properties. And I've not made a video on this yet, but I will in the future. But essentially, we have two rental properties. One is a typical long-term rental, and the other is a short-term rental that we use basically through Airbnb. Now, these properties are purchased with debt, right? We couldn't pay hundreds of thousands of dollars and buy these things cash. We use debt to do this. And the debt against those units is being offset by the income we're making. So with the long-term unit, we make about $500 a month, but with the short-term rental unit, we're making a little over $2,000 a month, which is pretty crazy. And so not only is our net worth increasing monthly because of the properties themselves increasing, but we're actually having cash flow as a result of those rental properties, meaning we have more money coming into us every month. And that really is an example of how to use debt correctly because people like Dave Ramsey would not let that happen, right? They would not say to take out a loan and buy an investment property. They say if you're gonna buy it, then save up cash. But it would take us forever to save up $130,000, $140,000, $150,000 in cash and then buy it. That's crazy. All for $2,000, $3,000 a month cash flow. Why do that when you can put $20,000 down, take out a loan on the rest, and have that same cash flow? Doesn't make sense. Now, I've made a video on how to set goals up above. You can click on that if you want. Basically, it's not that hard, but the idea is you set an objective, you budget your money, you save, and you put everything you've got towards that goal until you've got it accomplished. If you try hard, you can do it. Anybody can do it. It just takes a little bit of work and some discipline. So I mentioned the rental properties earlier, and that's actually a video that's going to be coming up soon. I'm going to be making a video on basically what they look like, how they perform, just basically the whole breakdown of what it's like to own a different rental property, short-term and long-term, kind of give you an idea of what that feels like. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and let's master your money.